And we're live.
Hey, everybody on YouTube and in just a minute, also on Facebook. Welcome. Starting to do something a little bit new. I want to do a short weekly live broadcast to answer some of the most common questions that I get in. So we do this with the blog video where I'm answering questions, but I wanted to take a little bit more time and just answer some specifically and ones that I felt like I could do a good job of answering in this kind of a format where I just kind of talk through it. So the one thing you'll notice that might be a little bit weird is I'm going to be looking back and forth between the two different cameras that we have set up. So we're streaming to Facebook on the iPad. So like I'm looking at that camera now. And then if I look up, I'm actually looking at those of you who are watching this on YouTube. So you'll just have to kind of put up with my eyes jumping back and forth a little bit between the two cameras as we're going through this. So first of all, if you are watching, just let me know if you can hear me, if everything's working well. And Heather, thank you for joining. Glad that you're here. I'm still getting used to the Facebook Live. I can see sometimes the viewer names pop up, but it doesn't usually show me all of them. So I know there's a few of you guys on here. Thank you for joining in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get right into the question. So our question came in from Tom and Cindy. It came in via email, and it was how to choose the right trail horse. So there's a few things that you want to take into consideration anytime that you are considering a horse. Generally, you want to think about the suitability of the horse's type and temperament to the activity that you want them to do. You also want to think about the suitability of the horse's build and of their temperament to you as the rider, to your skill level as well as to your preference. And then there's just the really logistical things, like you've got to think about the horse's health, and you have to think about age and your plans in both the short and the long term. So for a trail mount, to talk a little bit about, choosing kind of a breed, a type, and age for a trail horse, most trail riders, and I think this is definitely the case from what I got from your email, Tom, was you want a really steady trail horse. So you're going out to ride on trails to have a good time, to be able to relax and enjoy yourself. And you don't necessarily want to be out there and kind of in training mode or working with a young feisty horse as you're doing that. So when you're thinking about the temperament of a horse for trail, the more experience that they've had out there, the better. A lot of people make the mistake of getting a horse that might seem really quiet in the arena, but if they haven't just had the miles out on the trail and the exposure to all of the different things that can come up out there, they can be a totally different horse when you actually get out. So when you go to look at a horse for a trail mount, make sure that you're actually getting out on the trail and you're seeing them ridden on the trail, you're riding them on the trail, and you're actually kind of testing them in that environment. And the more important that trail riding is for you, the more that you want to do, then the more important it is for you to see the horse out and see them in a variety of different situations to know if they're going to be a good match. So as far as temperament, the more experience they have and the quieter the horse is as far as how they seem to be able to just easily handle different and new situations, the better. Also, the age of the horse. This is a very rough guide. There's always exceptions to the rule, but in general, I recommend horses over 8 and under 15 in a situation like this. The reason being is that under 8, a lot of times young horses are going to have more development to do, even just mentally and through their training because of their age. They simply haven't had probably as much experience. And if you start going over 15, it can be a really good mount still for a number of years, but that's when you have to take into consideration the health of that particular horse and what your plans are. If you want to have a horse that's going to be yours for the next 10 or 15 years, buying a horse at 15 is probably not the best choice, where if you're just looking for a really good mount and you think you're probably only going to be actively riding for maybe another 4 or 5 years, then it could be more appropriate. When we look at the breed and the type of the horse as far as conformation and build, generally speaking, the more kind of stock type horses, so a horse that's built a little bit shorter, a little bit stockier, thicker boned, we would say, is going to be hardier on the trail. So there's a reason that like Mustangs have developed with the kind of structure that they do. They're a short, small, kind of bigger boned, hardy, stocky little horse, and they do really well, living out and living feral. A lot of times horses that are finer boned, so for example, Arabs are really good at endurance. They're also a very hardy horse, but they tend to have a little more of a hot or reactive types of temperaments and personality. So you have to match the type of the horse not only to your activity. If you're wanting to be a trail rider and do endurance, then you're going to be looking at more of that Arab type or that more leaner built horse than if you're just looking to go out and ride for half an hour at the walk and take a leisurely ride through the woods. You could get a horse that's built much more stockier because you're not going for that athletic performance. You're just going for something that's going to take you out for a nice quiet ride. But when you're out on trails, and especially if you're going to be riding for a length of time, it's important to also think about how your body as a rider is going to fit that horse. So for example, if you're a shorter rider and you've got a short thigh, if you buy a horse that has a really round barrel and a really flat back, you might find that more uncomfortable than if you found a horse that was basically just built with a smaller rib cage and easier for your leg to drape around that horse. Of course, it also makes sense to think about just your overall size as a rider in comparison to the size of the horse. And it's really tough to give an exact kind of ratio or like weight ratio to how much a horse can carry, because that depends on a number of factors. It depends on how skilled the rider is. So the better that a rider manages their own weight, they're going to be able to ride horses that are comparatively smaller because they can stay really balanced and manage their weight well. On the other hand, if the horse is really strong and really stocky, then as far as their height, a shorter horse that's built with that bigger bone and that stocky build is going to be able to carry more weight comfortably than a horse that is maybe very tall, but also built very lean and thin. So there's a lot of considerations to take in there, but for trail riding, a lot of times people are riding for longer periods of time, and you want to make sure that your body type fits well with the body type of the horse that you're getting. A good way to start getting a feel for that, for what horse fits you well, is to ride a bunch of different horses and notice when you're riding what feels good. What kind of a horse are you on that maybe it's got a really broad back and you just start to get a little uncomfortable after 20 or 30 minutes, and what size horse do you just feel really good on? So I'm going to take a quick pause here and just check in on some of the comments. I'm watching the Facebook comments, and Julia is helping to run the feed here, so she's also watching the comments. Do we have any questions in on your end? No. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to jump in. Oh, and we have, okay, I'm not going to pronounce your name correctly, I'm sure, so I apologize, but it's pretty cool that you're watching from Pakistan. So hello, Farhan. I probably did not pronounce that right. All right, so just a few other considerations for getting a horse in general is you want to be aware of the different types of sellers that are marketing horses. So there's private sellers, that is, people like you and me that have a horse that was their personal horse and for whatever reason have decided to part ways with them and they offer them for sale. There's also people that are kind of horse dealers, and these are usually where they bring horses in and they either sell them right away or they have them for a period of time where they're working with them and then they sell them. So horse dealers. There's auctions where horses go in and they basically just get auctioned off. And there's also situations like what we sometimes do here at my barn, which is a horse comes in, and as trainers, we help with the marketing of that horse, and then they kind of the sale goes through our barn, but we're not a dealer in that we're not getting horses in and just sending them out and doing it on a larger scale. So that's basically where a trainer kind of works as an agent to help with selling a horse. So the reason it's important to understand what type of a seller you're working with whenever you're looking to buy a horse is that you are going to have a different experience, and also you're going to have more information on the background of the horse. Generally, the more that you are working with the actual owner, and of course, the longer that they've had the horse, the more history that they can give you. And when you're looking for a horse that's going to be kind of your personal horse, you want this to be your trail horse, and you need that reliability on the trail, the more history that you have, the better. So the most ideal situation would probably be to look for a private seller that can tell you a lot about the horse. You want to go out and usually see them more than once, get a good feel from the person that you're purchasing from, ask lots of questions, and also always make sure that you get a pre-purchase vet exam. Usually the extent of that is going to depend on the purchase price and also how much you're looking to do. So one of the things with trail horses is a lot of times some, low-level unsoundness or, some mild arthritis, basically some mild problems. A trail horse can still go out and do a really good job and actually be comfortable doing his job, walking around on the trail, than if you were looking to take that same horse and try to take him into the arena and really be doing more intense dressage work or jumping courses or working cattle or just doing something that's more athletically demanding. So when you're doing your pre-purchase and you're thinking about the health of the horse, you can take that into consideration and talk to your vet about what your plans are. So the key takeaways from our discussion here is first to take some time to really consider what it is that you want to be doing with your trail horse. How long are you going to be riding? What kind of trails are you going to be riding on? How long do you plan on keeping the horse? How are you just going out on the weekends, or are you going to be out there every day? And then think about the suitability of the horse for you. What temperament horse do you need? How skilled are you as a rider? And just your body type. What body type of horse is going to fit you best? And then when you actually get into the purchasing process, you want to get familiar with the type of seller that you're working with. Ask lots of questions about the horse. Preferably make sure that they have a good bit of experience on the trail, that you get to try them out on the trail, and then talk to your vet about your goals and what you need to do to make sure that the horse physically is going to be a good match. I also have a book where I go a little bit more in depth about just in general the process of buying a horse and some things to look for outside of just trail riding. So that is Buying Your First Horse. You can find it on Amazon. I'm looking at my cheat sheet. So you can take a look at that on Amazon. That's also included in the Balanced Riding course, which is going to be coming up soon. And you can go to balancedridingcourse.com to get some more information on that when we start putting out the enrollment information. And I'll just leave a few minutes here if you have any other questions. Do we have a question? Julia was looking at me, so I could tell we had a question.
Our first question from Heather is it typical to have a trial period?
Yeah, really good question. Trials vary a lot. It's something that is really individually negotiated between kind of every buyer and seller. Trials are fairly common. The positive about a trial is obviously that you have more time with the horse and that you have the horse in usually your environment, like you bring them to your barn to be able to work with them. The downsides of the trial is they're usually 1 to 2 weeks on average. sometimes that is not a lot of time for the horse to really settle in and for you to get a good feel for what their temperament is. Now, if you're looking for an old horse that's, older horse that's been around the block and you want to be a really good experienced trail horse, they should be able to come into a new environment and actually settle in pretty quickly. But sometimes with looking at, younger horses or prospects, that's a little bit short of a time period to really get a good feel for the horse's demeanor. The downsides of a trial is, as the buyer, you are taking a risk because that time is often when you're bringing a horse into a new environment, especially if they're going out with new field mates, things can happen. They can get injured. And as the buyer, you're usually completely responsible for that, even if the horse turns out not to be a good fit. And as the seller, there's, again, the pro and con, the pro being that you are probably finding a better match for your horse by allowing the trial and more confident that it's going to be a good match for the person that's buying, which means that it's just a better home and experience for the horse as well. But the con is, again, that you're taking that risk not only of injury, but also of what that person is going to be doing with your horse, and are they going to potentially do anything that could have negative impacts on that horse's training and experience. So thank you for bringing up the trial question. Anything else that I've missed?
We had another riding question. Do you want to take a riding question?
Sure.
Okay, this is from Nathalie, I think is how you pronounce her name. She said, what can you do when your horse is going fast when hacking out in a group? And he doesn't stop as good when you are alone. He doesn't listen to me when I'm hacking out in a group.
Yeah, this is the kind of the really typical training problem that comes up, in that the more distraction we add on, the more the horse gets excited / distracted, and the aids they're no longer responding to the aids. So whether they're just excited to the point that they're choosing not to, or I like to use the kind of like driving in traffic analogy of you get distracted by the traffic and you don't even notice maybe the radio playing anymore. So the horse is distracted by other things going on, and he's honestly not necessarily even registering the cues, the aids that you're giving. So what I would do is, when I have something like this, is I always look to kind of find the middle ground. So basically reduce the distraction to a point where you're still challenging the horse, but where you can still get a response. So like what I would do here is go out with a group of riders that knows you're going out for a training ride and is going to work with you. And then do things like ask them to ride out and stop and just stand there while you maybe ride a circle around them, go forward a little bit, halt, turn around and come back, ride past them both directions, have them purposely, maybe like trot a little bit past you, not just take off, but like go a little past you so that you have the opportunity to practice holding your horse at the walk. But you just set it up in a way that you can be successful because the other people are kind of helping you in setting up the environment, that it's not just an overwhelming experience. If that even feels like a little too much, you could break it down and maybe try riding with the group in the arena and see if that triggers it. It may or may not. But basically, you're just looking to find that middle ground where you can up that distraction and excitement level for your horse, but find where you're still getting the responses, work there, and then gradually increase from there. So really good question. If you have any other questions, both on Facebook or on YouTube, please reach out to us. You can send us a Facebook message. You can send an email to crktrainingvideos@gmail.com. We're going to be doing more of these just short, casual Q&A sessions, and I'd love to hear your questions. So I will see you back soon. Until then, have a great day.